And during a House Oversight Committee hearing yesterday on border security, Democratic Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida crystallized how House Republicans are just playing cynical politics with the issue.
If you listen to my colleagues, you would think the world didn't begin until President Biden was elected. You would think it was dinosaurs, the wheel, Jesus, the world was flat, the world was round, Biden was elected, every problem. Like nothing happened before. In fact, President Obama deported more people in each term than President Trump. Well, hold on a second. If the border wasn't a problem until President Biden was elected, then how were we deporting all of these people in administrations before Trump was elected? It's because this situation has been going on for decades. So stop lying to the American people that none of this happened until President Biden was elected. Just listen to the speaker, who was caught on a call the other day saying that we can't solve the border crisis until after the election. By the way, here's Congressman Troy Nehls giving it all away. Giving it all away. Let's read this. Let me tell you, when he's talking about immigration, let me tell you, I'm not willing to do a darn thing right now to help a Democrat, to help Joe Biden's approval rating. I will not help the Democrats try to improve this man's dismal approval ratings. I'm not going to do it. He's saying he's not going to do anything on the border. And he's from Texas, which needs help. I'm willing to do stuff on the border. I'm willing to do it. But they're not willing to do it because they're doing what people hate about this place. They want to use it to raise money. They want to use it to politicize it. But they don't want to solve the issue. There's a deal on the table. They can solve the issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Saying the quiet part out loud in some ways. I mean, Jackie, when it comes to border security, there actually is quite a lot of agreement, as we've seen, between Republicans and Democrats. Yes, Republicans want some measures that are more stringent, but you have Democrats in the House and in the Senate saying, absolutely, we have to do something on border security. Where does this leave, though, the issue of Ukraine? Because I keep hearing from senators that they're confident that America will not abandon the Ukrainians. They know what that would do to allies around the world, and they know the cost of doing that. But I'm listening to the House, and I just don't. Maybe you hear it, but I'm not hearing that this is something that they're prepared to do because they don't want to give the president any kind of win.
You're absolutely right. That's something that we can't underestimate here. The political imperative of House Republicans, people like Troy Nehls and Bob Good, who have outright said we don't want to give Biden this political win, and that's going to dictate our vote. There are also people who have continued to say that we're not going to continue to fund Ukraine, pointing to some of what they believe to be misspending on part of Zelensky and the Ukrainian forces. But when Mike Johnson walked out of that meeting at the White House yesterday with Chuck Schumer, House Intelligence members, Jake Sullivan, Avril Haines, and Joe Biden, he did acknowledge that he came out thinking that we need to continue to assist Kyiv in some capacity. And I think that at the end of the day, if the House has to ultimately vote on something on this package that McConnell has said is going to make it through potentially next week, that it's going to put Republicans in a jam. You know, it's hard, I think, to look at people like Mark Green and members on the Homeland Security issue who are bringing in the parents of people who have been killed by migrants and trying to argue that they need to impeach Mayorkas while also trying to kill a border bill that Lindsey Graham is saying is the best thing that lawmakers have seen in years, and that having a discussion about border security without a pathway to citizenship is almost unheard of and something that would never get done in a potential future Trump administration. So I think what you saw yesterday is a prelude to this potential jam that Mike Johnson is going to face next week with his members.
Willie, think about this. Jackie brings up such a great point. They want to impeach Mayorkas because they say there's not order at the border. And then they say, we're not going to do anything to fix the border because it may also help Joe Biden politically. So they're impeaching a guy for chaos at the border, they got the most conservative border security bill ever, according to Lindsey Graham, according to John Thune, according, my God, to James Langford, one of the most conservative members in all of the Senate from Oklahoma, running this show. Again, has been anti-Biden since day one. And they say, we're not going to do anything. The House, the comrades in the House say, we're not going to do anything to fix the border. Talk about hypocrisy, just laid out for everybody to see. I hope those impeachment hearings are televised, because they're going to be fun as hell to watch.
So there is chaos. There is a crisis at the border. Republicans, Democrats get together on the Senate side and say, yes, there is. We've identified the problem. Here's what we propose to do about it. The House rejects it because it's so important to them that Donald Trump return to the White House, that Joe Biden doesn't get a win, that they won't take the solution they've been begging for how long. The other side of this, of course, John, we're talking about the politics of this, is it'd be a shame to let this moment pass. There is a crisis at the border. It's an untenable situation. Here's a moment, a rare moment. It comes around like once a decade, where you might get something done that both parties could agree on about immigration. And it looks like the House is willing to let that opportunity slide in defense of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and White House officials recognize something has to get done at the border. They have changed their tune in recent months. They're willing to go pretty far, to the point where there's some in the Biden orbit that are anxious of how progressives will react, but they're willing to make the deal. I think the progressives will eventually stay home. John Thune is right. I think he said it very well. He's being very clear-eyed about the politics of this. If the Republicans wait for Trump to come back to office and then they have majorities in both houses, the Democrats are going to make their lives very difficult and exact far more concessions than they're willing to right now. Right. This is the best deal they're going to get. And the Republicans in the Senate, you can see that. You can see even the frustration on their faces. And again, most Republicans in the Senate also do want to help Ukraine, and Mitch McConnell among them. And this is a deal White House officials I spoke to last night after the meeting, they weren't quite as enthusiastic as Schumer, who came out there really trying to spin it. This is the closest we've been to a deal. But they do think that Johnson will eventually have to cave, that he'll make some sort of agreement. He'd be willing to make some sort of compromise, because the blowback would be so hard the other way if he doesn't, Joe and Mika. But this isn't done just yet. And and we have a government funding shutdown deadline looming tomorrow night that's complicating things further. There's also a snowstorm coming to Washington that's going to accelerate the timetable here, because they may not be able to have votes tomorrow. But they're not at to use the football analogy, they're not at the 5-yard line, but they are moving down the field, and time is of the essence.
Wow. The Washington Post, Jackie Alamany, thank you as always.